The first page is questions. The last 3 pages are Bible text. And I'm not going to read through the Bible text because you can do that on your own. But I am going to tell the story. And I am going to tell the story. And before I begin with that story, I always have kind of an opening question. And the question for tonight is, the 4th one down, how much water can a thirsty camel drink in a day? Not a trick question, because it's going to come up later in the story. But how much water can a thirsty camel drink in a day? When you find out, multiply it by 10 to find out how much water Rebecca had to haul up from the well and give to the camels. Okay, when we get to that point, I'll tell you how much. Okay. But that's a good question to keep in mind. Okay, let's begin. Isaac. You got to go back to Abraham and Sarah at the very beginning to understand Isaac. You recall last week how we said that God promised Abraham a son through whom he would bless the whole world. And they got to be older and older, past the stage of childbearing, and it didn't happen. And Sarah said, Hagar, my servant, go to my husband, have a child with him. It was the custom of the day, so it was not a problem. And she did, and a child was born whose name was Ishmael. And Ishmael was Abraham's son, firstborn son, just as real as anything. But although he was born of Hagar, the servant, he belonged to Sarah because she was the master, the mistress of the house. Okay. They were trying to help God out, right? They were trying to help God out because God said, I'm going to give you a son. There wasn't any son, no child. We can help God out on this. And so that's what they did. Well, you know, God had another plan. And so when Abraham was 99 and Sarah was 89, some men came to Abraham and said, you're going to have a baby. A year from now, you're going to have a baby. And he couldn't believe it. And in the tent, Sarah laughed. You remember. And a year later, sure enough, baby was born. And she named him Isaac, which means
laughter.
Laughter, right? Means laughter. And oh, I think it's a preschool or something. Okay, so they're leaving. Anyway, so here we have this baby born. Isaac is born of a 90-year-old woman and a 99-year-old father. And do you think they're happy? Bet they're happy, because that is a woman's identity. That was her value. Have a children, and if you could not have a child, you weren't worth anything. And so finally, Sarah has a baby. Now, do you think she watches over and cares for that baby? Whoa, you better believe. And so as Isaac grows up, he becomes the most important kid in the house, not Ishmael. And pretty soon this rivalry develops, and Sarah says, look, I want Hagar and Ishmael out of here. She sends them away. And Isaac becomes the pride and prize of their life. Now, imagine what happens to a kid, an only child in a family where he is that precious. What happens to a kid like that? Does he get spoiled? Probably. Does he have to lift a finger to clean his room? Never. Does he have to do his own laundry? No. You know, does he have to fix his own lunch? No. Everything is handed to this kid. And so he is surrounded, cared for, loved, protected, and I use the word smothered, because I think that's probably what happened. Now, Abraham is a divided heart, because what happened to Abraham? He had a relationship with Hagar, with Ishmael. So Abraham kind of has a divided heart on this. You know, I mean, after all, Ishmael is his son. And he's not just going to turn his back. So when Ishmael and Hagar go out in the desert, he sends food with them. So to the mom, Isaac is everything. To Abraham, he's one of two kids. Get the dynamic going on here. Now, well, Isaac begins to grow up, gets to be a teenager. He's just prized like crazy, gets to be 20 years old, age of marrying, and what happens? Who has her arms around that boy? Mom. She gonna let him out of her sight? Gets to be 25, still got the mom. Gets to be 30, still got the mama. She died when she was 127 years old. She had him when she was 90 years old. Do the math. 37 years old, this boy is in the house. Yeah? And so he's an adult already, doesn't have any girlfriends, doesn't have any life outside of the house. And when his mom dies, his world changes. He is so attached, and I don't know if there's a word for it, fused or fusion or enmeshed, where you are so sort of involved. It's not a romantic relationship, but it certainly is a dependent, maybe even codependent relationship where they do something for each other. She dies and he goes into mourning. And Abraham, the dad, watches him. And he sees that Isaac is just despondent. Nothing will make him happy. And so Abraham ends up saying, you know what, Isaac, I'm going to give you all my money. I'm going to give you all my wealth. And Abraham was a very rich man. He had flocks, servants, he had land, he was one of the richest men of his day. He said, it's all yours. Did that make Isaac happy? Still in mourning for his mom. And so Abraham, wanting to help his son, realizing that he's getting older, said, I gotta get a wife for this man. Maybe that will take up this emptiness in his soul. And so 3 years later, when Isaac is 40 years old, Abraham calls in his servant. He says, I want you to go get a bride for my son Isaac. Hey, good to see you. Get a bride for my son Isaac, but don't take any women from around here. I want you to get a woman from our home back in Haran where we came from. And so he sends his servant, says, go look for a woman from our people. And that's why he ends up with a second cousin. But go back to Haran and look for a woman. Well, this servant prays. He says, Lord, help me to find the right woman. I don't know how to find her, but you can correct me. And so this servant is really smart. He takes 10 camels. 10 camels. And he said, I'm going to go. So he goes back to Haran, 7-day journey, 500 miles, and he prays. And he goes to a well of water. We're out in the desert there where people come out to get water for their flocks and their animals. And he says, I'm going to see what happens at this well. God had directed him there. Well, pretty soon out to the well comes this woman, beautiful woman, a young woman, and she's sparkling with personality. He's got his eye on her, he's watching what happens. And so as she comes to the well, he says, may I have a drink? And she just falls all over herself giving him the drink. He says, of course, of course, of course. And he can tell right away that she's a very generous, giving, personable, attractive young woman. I mean, she captures the servant's heart right away. Not only does she give him a drink, she says, not only that, she said, let me get some water for your camels. Whoa. Okay, here's the answer. A thirsty camel can drink 35 gallons of water in 6 minutes.
Again?
35 gallons of water in 6 minutes. Now, I don't know how thirsty these camels were, but a typical camel will drink between 55 and 60 gallons of water a day. So I'm not saying she got that much for each camel, but I'm saying it was probably a lot. 10 camels, let's just say it was 20 gallons. That's 200 gallons. This young woman is hauling from the stream, from the well, to the camel trough, water. And the servant's taking this in. He says, I think I might have found her. I think I might have found the woman. And so he approaches her people, because you always negotiate with the man. So she goes to the dad and or the brother, and he says, I have my servant back, he's back in Canaan, and he sent me to find a wife. He's from here originally, and I want to have this woman, who was Rebecca, her name is Rebecca, if she would come with me and be the wife of my servant. And so they go back. Rebecca talks to her family. She talks about what it would mean, and they say, if you have peace about it, go. So here's a woman who is willing to travel 500 miles to a place she has never seen to meet a man she doesn't know to be his wife. Hand it to Rebecca. Yeah? But I don't know. But she was willing to trust, and so she went with the servant, went back to Isaac, and Isaac took, the scripture says, you can read it in here, Isaac took her into his mother's tent, which is a clue right away what's happening here. Took her into his mother's tent, and she became his wife. Now the mother is dead, but the mother is still present. So get what's happening here. If you've ever been in a relationship where somebody else was calling the shots because of their influence and values, and you can hear Isaac saying, but my mom never did it that way. Well, that pie is good, but it's not like my mother made it. And he's still got this hole in his life that maybe he's trying to fill with this woman. And so right away it's a setup. As happy and beautiful and helpful as Rebecca is, she walks into this man with a needy heart. Get the picture. Okay, so, but she's not his mother, and she can never be his mother, she can only be his wife. Now the one thing she can give him that his mother could never give him is children. So she says, okay, well maybe if I become, pregnant and we have children, then he'll begin to love me in a different way. Well, 1 year goes by, 3 years goes by, 5 years go by, no kids. 8 years goes by, 10 years goes by, no kids. 15 years go by, 18 years go by, no kids. And she's beginning to get a little discouraged. And by this time, Isaac is getting up to be close to 70 years old. So, at 20 years of marriage, God opens her womb and she finally becomes pregnant. And it's a bonus because she has two. There's twins. And so there's this prophecy that comes from God that in your womb is growing two lives. The older will serve the younger. That's the prophecy that comes. The older will serve the younger, meaning the firstborn out of the womb will serve the secondborn coming later. And she keeps this in her heart, in her mind. Okay, she knows she's heard this. I'm not sure Isaac ever heard that, but Rebekah did. Well, the babies are born, and what kind of babies are they? 2 boys. And the first one comes out, the oldest comes out, and he's just hairy kid. Red hair. You know, he's just like red hair on his head, and I don't know where all he had red hair, but anyway, you know, babies don't have that much, but anyway, he comes out, and it said he was a ruddy kid. Means he was kind of a tough kind of little cookie. The second one comes out, not a hair on her, okay? Just a cute little bare-bottom kid, and completely different, more delicate, you know, not as hefty perhaps, and so they're very different from the very day they're born. They're very different. Well, they grow, and if you read the whole story, you can see how Isaac gets drawn to the firstborn kid, Rebekah gets drawn to the secondborn kid. They're completely different personality-wise, in their interests, in how they function, what they're interested in. The first one is called Esau, and Esau was a man's man. Now, you know, you can theorize about all this, but think about Isaac. Was he a man's man? No, he was a mama's boy. Right? And so here's this kid, his son, who loves to hunt and fish, climb mountains, be outside. He's a rough and tumble kid. And Isaac vicariously is drawn to him and that spirit. Something I never got to do, somebody I never was. I love this kid. Right? And the other boy is more delicate. He kind of likes being in the kitchen. He doesn't mind talking to mom. He's got an outgoing personality. Esau is kind of a private, you know how guys get, they don't say much, you know. They're kind of like a few words, you know, but, you know, macho kind. And Jacob, on the other hand, he just, you know, he loves to talk and da-da-da-da-da-da. Mama loves that about him. And so right away you've got favorites. She loves Jacob, he loves Esau. Well, short the story, one day Esau's out hunting, Jacob's in the kitchen cooking, and Esau's so hungry. He's been hunting for a few days, and he comes in, he's famished. Must not have caught anything. And Jacob's cooking some stew, and it smells so good. And Esau says, give me some of that stew, I'm so hungry. And Jacob said, okay. Oh, wait. If I give you this stew, you got to give me something. He said, okay, what, anything, what, I'm hungry. And Jacob said, I want your birthright. I want your birthright, okay, which is the key to the eldest son's future. All the privileges of the oldest son. I want your birthright. Jacob says, give that to me, I'll give you the soup. And Esau, being the macho man that he is, said, hey, what good is soup if I'm dead? I'm so hungry I could die. Just give me the soup, I'll give you the birthright. Okay, so that's what happens. He gives Jacob the birthright. Jacob gives him the stew, saves his life, and the whole thing's forgotten. Okay. Now, time goes on. Later, comes to the time when Isaac thinks he's going to die. He's blind by this point. He can't see anymore. He thinks his days are numbered. Actually, he lived quite a long time after this. But he says, I'm going to die. I have to bless my son. And of course, he means Esau, the oldest son. Rebecca knows that whoever gets the blessing is the one through whom God is going to pass this promise to the world. And so Jacob and Rebecca, she comes up with a plan. She said, I want you to go into your dad, pretend to be your brother, have him bless you, and then you'll have this sort of blessing for the rest of mankind. Which I think in her mind was, you can take care of me in my old age. You know? You can take care of me. So, Jacob says, now my dad's sharper than that. He's going to want to feel my skin, and he's going to see that it's smooth because Esau's hairy and I'm not. So the mom says, go out there and get 2 goats. Kill the goats, bring them in, and I'll take care of it. So the goats come in. He takes the skin from the goats, puts it on the neck, his neck, and on his arms. And he tries to disguise his voice, but it's, trying to imitate his brother, not so good. So he goes into his brother, or to his father, and asks for the blessing. And Isaac, old as he is still sharp. He says, you know what? He said, the voice doesn't sound like Esau's. Let me touch you. So he reaches out and touches Jacob. He feels the hair. The skin is Esau's, the voice is Jacob's. Oh well, I'm going to bless you. And so he goes ahead and gives the blessing to Jacob. And Esau is out in the field hunting. He doesn't know what's going on. When he comes in, he discovers what has happened. And he's mad. He is angry. So angry that he wants to kill Jacob. And so Rebecca, the mother, sees what's happening between her sons. And Isaac, realizing now what has happened, somehow when Esau came back, then he realized, oh no, I blessed the wrong kid. He said, okay, I'm going to let it stand. I'm not going to change it. And Rebecca, knowing that Esau is going to take the first chance to kill Jacob, said, Jacob, you got to get out of here. Got to get out of here. So she sends Jacob, her son, off back to Haran. And that's next week's story, where Jacob goes back to Haran and gets his wife back there. That's a really interesting story. So that's kind of a summation of these last 3 pages of Scripture. You can read them for yourself and get the actual dialogue and what happened. It's from Genesis about 24 through Genesis 28. So those are the 4 chapters. Now, I'm going to take a breath. What do you think about that story? Any reactions, any comments, any responses just from hearing it? What do you think?
Is the birthright different from an inheritance?
There was the inheritance. Well, there was a blessing and there was an inheritance. And both of them should have gone to the eldest. But both of them went to Jacob. So I don't know exactly what the difference was. One was a verbal thing and one was a legal thing. A spiritual thing and a legal thing. The legal thing was the land.
But Esau gave it up.
I'm sorry?
Esau gave his up.
Yeah, he gave up, I guess because he thought he was going to die and he needed the food. That was where he